So we should actually tell everyone, thank you everyone for joining us this evening. We should tell everyone what your official title is, who you are, what you do. I mean, it's quite amazing what you do. A day in the life of you is quite interesting.
So my name is Sam. I'm a physiotherapist, but I specialise in burns care. I work for the NHS predominantly for Winston, so at St Helens and Knowsley on the burns centre there. But as part of a SLA, we've got involved with the Katie Piper Foundation, and we work really, really hard with the team to establish a sort of the best patient care that we can. Rehab is quite a difficult area for burn survivors. It doesn't just stop as this patient's discharged from the hospital. It carries on throughout the life, basically. And the rehab
centre, like an average person, when they think of rehab, they think of drug and alcohol rehab. And when they think of rehab for a burn patient, I don't think people really know what that looks like.
No. So rehab for a burns survivor, should I say, it starts from the minute they wake up. So they have a routine of exercises, stretches. As you're well aware, Katie, it's a daily struggle. You know, it gets better, but the support that the rehab centre provides for these patients is just unbelievable, because the NHS has its limits. We can't provide as much support. I mean, we give 4 weeks inpatient stay for burn survivors and help with their recovery. They have intense therapy daily. They do activities, some things that they never thought they might do again. So like getting on a horse, climbing, boxing. You know, I've took a few of my patients boxing and they absolutely loved it. It's such fun. And as Joanne said last week with the climbing and the abseiling, I saw the videos of that, which was good fun.
You don't abseil, do you?
That yet. So,
do they get you abseiling as well?
No, they didn't get me abseiling. I saw the videos of Joanne and learnt my lesson.
Do you know what? It's so funny though, because I remember when I was in rehab and people think like, well, I wonder what is classed as a goal or what's classed as a breakthrough. And I remember when I started rehab, the scarring around the edge of my mouth was so tight that I couldn't eat an apple, like vertically or horizontally. And by the time I left rehab, I could bite an apple. And that was like so life-changing for me because, you know, I'd be like starving hungry and not want to eat in front of people. I'd be too self-conscious, too embarrassed. It would be painful to try and do it. Sometimes I would split the scarring and end up bleeding. And I think I did 6 weeks, not solid, but on and off in rehab. And literally it changed the quality of my life, you know. It's not all people think of burns and scars to be about no longer feeling attractive, but it's actually so much. When you wake up, all you're worried about is function, you know, your eyesight, your mobility, how far are you restricted from your burn injury. I actually think appearance comes into it a lot later down the line, actually. You've got a lot of shout-outs here, by the way.
I'm not looking because it's making me nervous.
I'm going to read. You're like a celebrity on here. I'm going to read some of the shout-outs for you because they're actually so lovely. You've got a lot of patients and you've got a lot of friends. Lisa Chapel, 82. She says, Sam, we are missing you so much. Little Pudding's Cake says Sam is the best. Katie Piper Foundation says thank you to everyone who's donated to us tonight. Tori Jane says go on, Sam. Mia Salt says Sam, you are so amazing, as are all the KPF team. Look, we have JRC, amazing people doing phenomenal things. Katie Dutton or Sam, I'm so proud of you. Go. Katie Piper Foundation say text KPF to 785 to donate £3. Well, here's a question. It's Ellen Lynch says, what does the rehab centre do?
So the rehab centre offers support both physically and also emotionally to patients that have been through a traumatic injury. So we have had patients through that aren't necessarily just burn survivors. We have had people through that have been survivors from something called necrotizing fasciitis, which leaves people with quite severe horrendous scarring, which isn't very well known in the media. But we help with regards to that. So physically, we'll help treat the scarring. We'll help with physical rehabilitation, such as exercise, get them fitter. It's very goal specific depending on what the patient wants to do. So we can go in with all the ideas in the world, but if they don't want to do it, it's completely centered around that individual.
Because for me, I always found it crazy that, you're leading what is your normal life, a bit like how we all were before lockdown, and then suddenly something is sprung on you, just like lockdown was sprung on everybody. But for our patients, what's sprung on them might be an attack, it might be an accident, it might be self-harm, it might be, their mental health starts to deteriorate and there's some kind of self-harm. And then when they come out of hospital, it's a whole new life that they never knew. And I think it's crazy to expect somebody just to go home, to go home and try and work again, to try and form friendships, relationships again. I actually don't think it's possible without rehabilitation.
Yeah, I would agree with you, and that's why I do genuinely love what I do, because helping people get back to that point where they're actually okay with going out again, or like you said, simple things like eating an apple that you'd never have thought about beforehand, actually being that one person that helps them to do that, it's so rewarding, and the benefit that patient's going to get at the end of the day.
So you've got some more. You've got some more ones. You've got Stir 51 says, "Well done, Sam. You're doing a great job. Keep it up." Lisa Willow 82. "Well done, Sam. I'm so proud of you." Katie Critch says, "Go, Sam. That's my best friend." Miyama Salt says, "Sam, you worked with my hubby Sal, and you are amazing."
He's an inspiration.
And then look, Naomi Hannah says, "My local hospital, you're amazing, Sam, and thank you for all your hard work." Oh, look, someone says, Rochi 2285, "Sam kills you every morning." Because I guess really, like, your job, you do have to be quite tough on people as well.
Yeah, it's a love-hate relationship, I'm not going to lie.
Well, Lewis Banowich says, "Ask Sam about the time she punched me at boxing."
Yes. He didn't duck, that was the problem. So we were boxing and he just didn't duck. He wasn't quick enough.
And the thing is, like, obviously you deal with lots of different patients, and all the patients, we uphold the confidentiality on all of the survivors.
Yeah.
But are you able to tell me a story without naming anybody and giving away any private details where they came in the kind of depths of despair and you wondered would they come back, and they actually did come back? Because I think for me, if I look back on my own journey, when it was at the beginning, I just didn't know, how am I going to live as a woman with a facial disfigurement? How am I going to get married? What am I going to do? And I never saw anyone that represented that. So I felt like, actually, this isn't possible. I'm not part of society anymore. And when I met somebody who'd been in the Paddington Railway crash, and she'd worn the face mask, and she'd gone on to have boyfriends and set up a business, and it kind of inspired me that actually there is a point in keeping going. And I just wondered if you'd ever had any patients that you'd felt were kind of, well, they felt they were unhelpable, but actually they broke through that barrier.
So, yeah, a patient last year, actually, quite recently, that was quite a significant percentage injury. So I met them quite early on in the rehab, so within the acute setting as well. So I get the advantage of seeing the patients from the beginning, so from the acute setting right the way through to the rehab. So I see them at the absolute worst point, but then I get to see them at the best when they're leaving rehab. And the patient they're watching, actually, the patient that I'm talking about, their only goal the first time I met them was to be able to crouch down and hug the daughter. That really hit home. The daughter's similar age to mine. And, it was really difficult rehab. Without their motivation, they would have never got to that point where they were at today. And it was so inspiring to see the drive and determination that the end point now, they've got full range of movement. They crouch down to play with the daughter. They get to that point where they need to be. And I don't actually think, as a patient, they realise how inspiring they are to the therapy team, both at Wiston but also at KPF, at the rehab centre, because they work so hard. and seeing them at the worst, in tears, and it was really difficult, but then obviously getting them through to the next stage, and we're supporting them remotely at the moment as well. So I've done some video calling with them. They'll know who I'm speaking about now. Done some video calls with them in the last 2 weeks, and I'm planning on following them up as part of the KPF rehab, the virtual rehabilitation that we're doing at the moment. It's working really well. So I'm catching up with them regularly, and we're doing just review of range of movement, checking that they're doing okay. So
it's amazing, really, because like what you talk about, where the patient's priority was just to get down on the floor and be able to hug their child. And I think a lot of people who aren't burnt can relate to this right now, because we're all stripped back, and actually at the moment status, job role, money is not a valuable currency anymore. The only valuable currency at the moment is health and family, that company in isolation. And everyone now is valuing their families so much. And you look at that burn survivor you talked about, all they wanted to do was have connection with their loved one. And really, we kind of realised when everything's stripped back and taken away from us, that is such a valuable currency. And for you to be able to help them and give that back to them through a rehab is priceless, really.
Without their motivation, we wouldn't have got to the point where we were today with them. They push themselves daily more than I have ever seen with a burn survivor.
We do have a very motivated woman on the live. I think she's still here. We've got Katrin Pugh. Hello, Katrin. Katrin says, Sam, carry on doing what you did for me, helping give people their lives back. Big love. Hello, Katrin. Katrin's amazing. She's a strong, intelligent, inspiring woman who's had her own